I returned to the office after 3 grueling days in Chicago, where I'd closed the largest deal of my career. My client had signed on for a 5-year contract, worth enough to secure our division's budget for the next 2 fiscal years. The flight home had been sleepless, but I walked into the building lighter than I'd felt in months. This was supposed to be a victory lap. But the moment I stepped out of the elevator, I knew something was wrong. The energy of our floor, the constant hum of collaboration, the low buzz of chatter, the tapping of keyboards, was gone. The wide-open space where my team had worked for years was unnervingly silent. Even the overhead lights seemed dimmer. "Carla," I called out, looking for my project manager, who usually beat everyone else in. No answer. My heels echoed too loudly against the polished floors as I moved deeper into the East Wing. That's when I noticed it. The desks were empty. Not just cleared of papers, but stripped bare. Monitors gone, chairs missing. Even the corkboard covered with our inside jokes and late-night pizza receipts had been taken down. Only pale dust outlines remained where our equipment once stood. I froze. The office we had earned, the bright, airy corner space awarded after 3 consecutive quarters of over-delivery, was gone. A voice broke my shock. "Amanda." I turned to see Marcus from HR, holding a stack of folders. His expression was tight, almost apologetic. "Where's my team?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. He hesitated, shifting the folders from one hand to the other. "You should check the basement." "The basement?" My chest tightened. That wasn't office space. It was storage, maintenance, the place interns joked about when they lost Wi-Fi connection. Still, I forced my feet forward. The elevator ride down felt longer than my entire flight from Chicago. Each floor passed with a metallic groan, the sense of dread pressing harder against my ribs. When the doors opened, the air changed immediately. Stale, damp, with the faint smell of mildew. I followed extension cords that snaked along the floor, past stacks of old chairs and broken printers, until I found a door with a crooked piece of paper taped to it. In bold black marker, "Marketing Team B, my team." I pushed the door open. They were there, huddled together under low pipes and fluorescent lights that flickered like they were apologizing for existing. Their monitors balanced precariously on folding tables, cables tangled like jungle vines. A bucket caught water dripping from the ceiling, landing with hollow plunks beside Carla's desk. The faces that looked up at me weren't just tired. They were humiliated. "What happened?" I whispered, though I already knew. Carla's voice cracked as she spoke. "While you were gone, John came down with movers, said we had 30 minutes to relocate, for his new hire." A bitter laugh slipped from Eric, our copywriter. "The golden boy, some kid fresh out of a boutique agency. Apparently he's going to revolutionize the department." My jaw clenched. John, our new department head, barely 6 months in, desperate to impress the executives, and apparently willing to sacrifice the people who carried this company through late nights and impossible deadlines just to prop up a single flashy hire. I glanced at the faces around me. Carla, who had turned down higher-paying offers just to stay with this team. Eric, who had stayed up 3 nights straight rewriting a campaign that ended up saving a $1 million client. May, whose designs had become the backbone of our brand identity. Years of loyalty, years of results. And this was their reward? I took a deep breath. "Pack your bags," I said. Confusion flickered across their faces. "Not just for down here," I clarified. "For good. Quietly, without raising suspicion. Gather your work, your files, anything you want to keep, and don't mention this conversation to anyone else." Silence filled the basement. A silence so heavy I could feel it pressing against my skin. Then, slowly, Carla nodded. May reached for her notebook. Eric pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, his hands trembling. They didn't fully understand yet. But they trusted me. And John had no idea what was coming. By the time I climbed back upstairs, my pulse had steadied, but the anger hadn't left. I walked straight toward our old office, the space that had once felt like home. Through the glass walls, I saw him. The golden boy. He couldn't have been more than 26. Clean suit, hair styled like he'd walked straight out of a magazine spread. He was arranging framed certificates across the desk that had been mine, setting them down with a careful pride. His laptop gleamed, brand new. His chair, the one I'd personally picked for ergonomic support during our late nights, now rolled under his hand. And standing beside him was John, our department head. "Ah, Amanda," he said when he noticed me. His voice carried too much brightness, the kind used to mask guilt. "Back from Chicago already. Come in, come in." I didn't move. I stayed in the doorway, arms crossed. "This is Adrian," John continued, gesturing toward the young man. "Our new innovation strategist. He's here to help transform the department. Fresh ideas, bold perspectives, the kind of disruption we need." Adrian offered me a polite smile, but didn't stop arranging his certificates. Harvard, Yale, an internship with some boutique firm in New York. The type of shiny accolades executives adored. I said nothing. John lowered his voice as though confiding a secret. "We've moved your team temporarily. Basement space is all we had available until the next budget cycle. They'll be fine. It's only a few months. Meanwhile, Adrian will be leading our next big campaign. You'll support him, of course." The words hit like a slap. Support him? After everything my team had delivered? After the deal I'd just closed that secured the very budget John was pretending didn't exist? I kept my tone even. "You put my team in a basement with leaking pipes so one person could sit here?" John's smile tightened. "Amanda, I know it's not ideal, but this is the direction the company's moving in. Results are good, but optics matter. Adrian knows how to speak the language executives want to hear. You've always been reliable, but we need someone who can shine." There it was. Reliable. The word they use when they want to dismiss you politely. Not brilliant, not essential, just reliable. I felt something settle inside me then, a quiet clarity. "I see," I said softly. John mistook my calm for acceptance. He smiled wider. "Excellent. I knew you'd understand. Now, why don't you give Adrian access to the files from Chicago? He'll need them for the presentation next week." For a moment, I almost laughed. The deal I'd just closed, my deal, was being handed to someone who hadn't even been in the building when the first pitch was made. But I didn't argue. Not yet. Instead, I turned, walked out, and headed back to the basement. When I opened the door, the room fell silent. My team's eyes darted to mine, searching for answers. Carla spoke first. "Well?" I looked at them. The 7 people who had given years of loyalty, who had pulled all-nighters, who had sacrificed weekends and birthdays for impossible deadlines. And now, shoved underground so a stranger could play hero. I forced a smile, though my chest was burning. He's exactly what you imagined. Young, shiny, full of buzzwords. John is convinced he's the future. Eric swore under his breath. May's eyes welled with tears she quickly wiped away. "But here's the thing," I continued. "He doesn't know what we know. He doesn't have our history, our skills, or our trust. And John? He's too blinded to see it. That's fine. Let them underestimate us." Carla frowned. "Amanda, what are you saying?" "I'm saying," I replied, lowering my voice, "that we're not going to fight this in the open. Not yet. We're going to keep working, keep documenting, keep doing everything with excellence. But at the same time, we prepare. Quietly. For ourselves, not for them." The room stayed silent, the hum of the fluorescent light buzzing like a warning. Finally, Vega, the oldest of us, spoke. "You mean, leave?" "Eventually," I said. "But not in pieces, not resignations that trickle away unnoticed. Together, when the time is right." They exchanged glances. Some looked hopeful, others scared. Ren, the youngest, leaned forward. "But where would we even go? Who would take all of us?" I thought of my contacts. The clients I'd nurtured over the years, the network I'd built quietly while John played politics. A dozen possibilities flashed through my mind. That, I said slowly, is what I'll figure out. In the meantime, we work. We deliver. But everything we do, every draft, every design, every report, we keep copies. Our work belongs to us, not to someone who sees us as furniture to be shuffled around. Carla's lips curved into the faintest smile. Vega nodded once, solemn. Eric straightened his posture as though remembering who he was. I looked around the room, feeling the fire spread from me to them. Trust me, I whispered. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. For the first time that day, hope replaced humiliation in their eyes. John thought he'd buried us in a basement. He had no idea he'd just given us the perfect place to plan. For the next 2 weeks, life in the basement became our new reality. The air smelled faintly of mildew. The flickering fluorescent light gave half the team headaches. And every time the plumbing groaned above us, I felt the insult all over again. But my team showed up every day, still producing excellent work, still meeting deadlines, still loyal. It wasn't lost on me how much strength it took. I kept my promise to them. We worked as though nothing had changed. But quietly behind the scenes, I prepared. Every file we produced, every report, every campaign draft, we archived. Not just in the company system, but privately, in organized folders only we controlled. I instructed each team member to back up their contributions, to track revisions, to keep detailed notes. Why? Darius, our analyst, asked one afternoon. They don't care about our work anymore. Because we do, I told him, and because one day someone else will. The truth was, I'd already started reaching out. A call here, a message there. Former colleagues, old clients, people I hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't pitch anything yet. I was planting seeds, reconnecting, testing the ground. And while I worked quietly, upstairs, cracks began to appear in John's masterpiece. The first came during Adrian's innovation presentation. He stood in front of a dozen executives delivering slides full of buzzwords. Disruption, synergy, paradigm shift. He had polished graphs, colorful visuals, and a smile that never wavered. But when the questions started, real questions, his facade slipped. How does this scale with our current client portfolio? One executive asked. Adrian blinked. Well, that's something I'm still modeling. What about integration with existing campaigns? Another pressed. Adrian stammered. That will, depend on adoption rates. I heard about it later from a colleague who slipped into the basement to warn me. The kid froze, she whispered, glancing around as though sharing state secrets. John had to jump in and spin it. Executives didn't look impressed. I smiled quietly. Not because I enjoyed watching Adrian fail, but because the truth always finds its way out. Flash fades fast under pressure. The second crack came a week later. Adrian had been handed oversight of the campaign I'd secured in Chicago. My deal. My client. He was supposed to prepare the launch plan. Instead, he dumped half-finished drafts on my team. Just polish this up for me, he told Carla, as though she were an assistant. Carla, professional as always, nodded. But when she showed me the files, I nearly laughed. They weren't even coherent. Fluffy slogans, empty catchphrases, zero data. He expects us to fix this? She asked, eyes blazing. Yes, I said calmly. And we will, but we'll also keep the originals. We cleaned his mess, delivered a polished product, and watched as John paraded Adrian upstairs to present it. I heard later how Adrian had smiled proudly as though he'd crafted every line. My team's faces fell when they heard. He's taking credit for our work, May whispered. I know, I told them. And we'll let him. For now. Because each stolen draft, each presentation where Adrian faltered, each panicked email John sent to cover his protégé's mistakes, it was all part of the story that was quietly writing itself. One Friday evening, I stayed late, alone in the basement. The others had gone home, but I needed the silence to think. My phone buzzed with a message from an old client. "Let's catch up next week. I've been hearing interesting things about your company." I stared at the screen for a long moment. The network I'd nurtured for years was still alive. And now, they were watching. That's when I realized something important. John thought burying us in the basement made us invisible, but it had done the opposite. Executives were starting to ask questions. Clients were curious. And every day, Adrian revealed how little substance he had. The humiliation was real, but so was the opportunity. I closed my laptop, the sound echoing in the concrete room, and whispered into the empty air. Not much longer. The next Monday, John himself came down to the basement. He never set foot there unless he had to. He leaned against a folding table, his smile stretched too thin. "Good news," he announced. "We're considering moving you back upstairs. Not to your old space, of course. That's occupied. But the East Wing is being renovated. Might be ready by next quarter." My team exchanged glances. Hope flickered in Ren's eyes. Even Eric sat a little taller. I forced myself to smile. "That's very generous of you, John." He relaxed, mistaking my words for gratitude. But inside, I was already thinking ahead, because I knew something my team didn't. This wasn't generosity. It was desperation. The executives had started to doubt him, and he needed us visible again to cover Adrian's failures. It was too late. My team thought they were waiting for redemption. I knew we were preparing for escape. And John? He had no idea the ground beneath him was already starting to crack. By the time February rolled around, the cracks in John's Golden Boy experiment were becoming impossible to ignore. Adrian had charm, yes, and he could talk circles around buzzwords. But the moment anyone pressed for detail, he floundered. The executives were starting to notice. My team heard it in whispers from colleagues. Does he actually know what he's doing? But John still clung to him like a lifeline. Down in the basement, we carried on, day after day. The dripping pipes, the buzzing lights, the smell of damp cardboard. Those things became part of our routine. What mattered wasn't the conditions. It was the quiet shift happening within my team. They weren't beaten down anymore. They were waiting. Each day, I gave them quiet tasks. Archive projects, update documentation, polish transition guides. It looked like we were simply doing due diligence. In reality, we were preparing to walk out with everything organized, ready to hit the ground running somewhere else. One Wednesday, Ren cornered me as we were leaving. "Amanda, I don't get it. Why help them like this? They shoved us down here and we're making transition guides for them?" I put a hand on her shoulder. Because everything we do with integrity. We don't let them decide who we are. And because when the time comes, those guides will prove just how much they relied on us. She didn't look entirely convinced, but she nodded. That same week, I had coffee with an old colleague, Martin, who now worked at a mid-sized firm downtown. I hadn't told my team yet. I wanted to test the waters first. "You still have that crew of miracle workers?" Martin asked, stirring his espresso. "I do," I said carefully, "though we're not exactly being treated like miracle workers these days." Martin leaned in, lowering his voice. "Funny you mention that. We're expanding. Big accounts coming in, more than our current staff can handle. We need people who can deliver under pressure. People who don't crack when things get ugly. Sound like anyone you know?" I smiled. "I can't promise anything yet," I said. "But if things don't improve where we are, I might be open to conversations." Martin didn't press, but when I left the cafe, I felt the first flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks: freedom. Meanwhile, upstairs, Adrian's failures were becoming John's problem. At a Friday all-hands meeting, Adrian presented his latest strategic overhaul. He clicked through slides of sweeping changes, abandoning traditional client channels, doubling its spend on untested platforms, rebranding campaigns that were already successful. The room was silent when he finished. Finally, one executive asked, And what's the projected ROI on these changes? Adrian opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes darted to John. John jumped in, talking fast, throwing percentages that didn't add up. I caught the looks exchanged between executives, calculating, skeptical. Later that day, John stormed into the basement, his tie askew. I need the numbers from the Chicago account cleaned and ready by Monday, he snapped. Carla raised an eyebrow. Didn't Adrian already present his projections? John's face flushed. Just do it. We did. We always did. But this time we made sure to keep copies. That weekend, I invited the team to my apartment. Nothing fancy. Pizza boxes stacked on the counter, laptops scattered across the dining table. They looked nervous. It wasn't often I pulled them outside of work. Why are we here? Eric asked, pushing his glasses up. I took a deep breath. Because it's time to be honest with you. I've started talking to people, reaching out to contacts. There are opportunities out there, real ones, for all of us. The room went still. You mean, leave? May whispered. Yes, I said simply. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Together. Vega leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. After 30 years here, I thought I'd retire at this company. But sitting in that basement, it's clear they don't value us. If you're saying we can walk out of there and land somewhere that does, I'm in. Carla nodded firmly. Ren's eyes lit up with something close to relief. One by one, they agreed. For the first time in weeks, I saw their shoulders lift, the weight of humiliation easing just a little. Good, I said. Then here's the plan. We keep working. We keep smiling. We let them believe they've broken us. Meanwhile, I'll secure our options, and when the time is right, we walk, all at once. They looked at me with a mix of fear and hope. You really think we can pull this off? Ren asked. I met her gaze. I don't think. I know. As they left that night, I stood at the window, looking down at the city lights. Somewhere out there, opportunities were waiting. Somewhere out there, people would actually value what we could do. John thought he'd buried us in a basement. What he didn't realize was that basements aren't just for storage. They're where foundations are built. And we were building ours, brick by brick. By the first week of March, the basement felt less like punishment and more like a staging area. We still hit every deadline. We still documented every step. We still smiled when someone from upstairs came down to check in. But the mood had shifted. People weren't defeated anymore. They were alert. At 7:12 a.m. on Monday, my phone buzzed with an email from Martin. Subject: formal offer, team transition. Body: attaching roles and compensation for your entire team. We can accommodate staggered starts within 2 weeks. Dedicated workspace, equipment of your choosing, and budget approval for 2 hires you've been asking for. I opened the PDF and skimmed. Salary bumps between 22 to 35%. Titles that matched actual responsibilities. A hybrid work policy, and, crucially, a promise in writing. Creative autonomy and veto power on strategy when data didn't support an idea. It was the kind of respect you can't fake. 20 minutes later, a second message landed. From Priya, a former client now VP at a national retailer. Subject: pilot proposal. We want your team on a 6-month retainer. You choose deliverables. If results hit targets, we expand to a multi-year contract. I'll put this in writing if you're in. I stared at the screen long enough for the coffee to go cold. 2 doors, both open. At noon, I brought pizza to the basement, thin crust, everybody's favorite, and handed out printed copies of Martin's offer. I watched their faces as they read. Eric exhaled first, long and shaky. This is real. May pressed a hand to her mouth. Ren blinked fast, like she was trying not to cry. Vega read every word twice, then laid the pages down like a ceremony. Before anyone says yes, I said, we still finish what we started here. We do a clean handoff. No loose ends, no burn bridges. But you should also see this. I held up Priya's email on my phone. an optional retainer. If we take it, we walk in with revenue. Carla nodded slowly. That gives us leverage. Exactly, I said, and protection. We're not running, we're transitioning, on our terms. The door swung open before anyone could reply. John walked in with Marcus from HR on his heel. John's smile stretched too wide. Team meeting, he announced. Good news. He set a thin folder on our folding table like it was a trophy. The East Wing renovation is approved. We'll have space for you. Temporarily at first. Also, effective immediately, I can offer a 15% raise across your team. In return, I need you all aligned behind Adrian's strategy. The company needs unified messaging. Carla's expression didn't move. Vega's jaw did. I kept my voice even. Is the raise in writing? Marcus cleared his throat. We can get letters out by end of week. And the space? I asked. Is it ours, or are we bridging for someone else? John's smile twitched. You'll be upstairs. Optics matter. We need you visible. There it was again. Optics. Not value. Not trust. Optics. We'll review, I said. We'll let you know by tomorrow. John looked surprised I hadn't thanked him. Great, he said too brightly. Let's move forward together. When they left, the door closed on a silence so thick I could taste the metal in it. Ren was the first to speak. 15%? That would have been amazing 3 months ago. It's bait now, Vega muttered. It's data, I said. It tells us they're worried. I didn't say what I was thinking. You don't offer money and a move upstairs unless someone above you is asking hard questions. That night, at 8:43 p.m., I got the proof. An email from the CEO's assistant. Elena would like to meet with you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. No subject line fluff. No explanation. Just a time. I didn't sleep much. I printed what I needed. A 5-year productivity snapshot with our team's deliverables. A resource allocation timeline showing the day we were moved to the basement. A clean, side-by-side comparison of Adrian's proposals and the actual data behind them. And a neutral, factual transition plan. 2 weeks, complete documentation, available for Q&A integrity in black and white. At 9:27 a.m., I was outside Elena's office. Glass walls, city view, minimalist desk, nothing to hide behind. She stood when I walked in. Amanda, sit. Her tone was level, but her eyes were measuring. I set my folder on the desk and waited. I've heard a dozen different versions of the same rumor, she said. Your team plans to resign together. Is that true? I haven't submitted anything, I said. But I've made sure we're employable. If we leave, we will do it cleanly. She didn't flinch. Why now? The basement? I know it was unacceptable. I signed off on the move because I was told it was temporary and necessary. I slid the first packet across the desk. This is 5 years of deliverables. Ours, by name. 72% of the department's shipped campaigns, 90% on time, 95% within budget. This, I added, tapping the next sheet, is the date we were moved to the basement and the subsequent drop in cross-team response times and QA pass rates. Elena scanned. Quiet. I kept going. This is a neutral review of the Chicago account Adrian is leading. You'll see inconsistencies between his projected ROI and the assumptions he used. Not malicious, just ungrounded. She turned to the last section. And this? A transition plan, I said. If we leave, we'll leave well. 2 weeks, full documentation, 8 hours of scheduled knowledge transfer per functional area. I won't let my team walk out and burn the place down. Elena set the papers down and looked at me for a long beat. Do you want to stay? I didn't answer right away. I want my team respected, I said finally. I want decisions to be driven by data, not optics. And I want authority to say no when a plan doesn't hold water. And John? She asked. That's your call, I said. But my team won't report to someone who put us in a basement to make room for a resume. She smiled. but it wasn't a happy smile. I appreciate your clarity. She slid a blank notepad toward me. If I asked you to write the structure you'd say yes to, what would it look like? I wrote 3 lines. Direct reporting to the VP or CEO for 12 months to rebuild trust. Autonomy with accountability. Quarterly targets. Veto power against non-data-backed changes. Facilities, resources, suitable workspace, equipment parity, and hiring approval for 2 additions. I pushed the notepad back. If you can't do that, I understand. We have options. Elena read it, then capped her pen. Give me until tomorrow. When I stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzed again. This time from an unknown number. I answered. Is this Amanda? A man asked. I'm Samir, CFO at the Chicago client. We had a call with Adrian this morning. It didn't go well. He paused, choosing his words. We signed with your company because of you and your team. If you're not leading the account, we'll reevaluate. I hear you, I said. I can't make promises I can't keep. That's fair, he said, but we need a clear answer by Friday. When the line went dead, I stood there with the phone against my palm, the weight of it new. It wasn't just about us anymore. There were consequences outside our building. Back in the basement, I gathered everyone around the folding tables. We have 2 external offers, I said. 1 salaried, team intact. 1 retainer, revenue on day 1. The CEO asked for a day to respond to our terms. The client from Chicago hinted they'll walk if we're not on the account. Carla let out a low whistle. Darius rubbed his temples. May folded her arms tight across her chest. What do you want us to do? Ren asked. Exactly what we've been doing, I said. We document, we deliver, we don't leak. Tonight, check your handover notes again. Tomorrow might move fast. If you're watching this and you've ever been shoved into a metaphorical basement, I'd say to camera if this were already a video. Here's your reminder. Make a plan before you make a scene. But this wasn't a video. Yet. It was the line I kept repeating to myself. At 6:11 p.m., as we packed up, John appeared in the doorway again, alone this time. His voice had lost its bounce. Amanda, he said, let's talk. I can push the raises to 20%. We'll announce your move upstairs tomorrow. I'll put you as co-lead with Adrian. I met his eyes and saw finally what had been missing all along. Fear. I'll let you know tomorrow, I said. When he left, Eric muttered, Co-lead is code for babysitting. Co-lead is code for optics, I said, and tomorrow isn't about optics. I turned off the flickering lights, and for a second the room fell completely dark before the emergency strips glowed. In that breath of darkness, the plan felt solid, like stepping onto something that wouldn't give way. The next morning, I arrived earlier than usual. The basement was still and quiet, only the hum of the fluorescent lights keeping me company. I laid out the final versions of our documentation packets on the folding table. Transition guides, project overviews, client histories, all meticulously prepared. One by one, my team filtered in. Carla set her coffee down and glanced at the papers. Feels like we're packing for a trip, she said softly. In a way we are, I replied. We just don't know which destination yet. At 9:15 a.m., I received a text from Elena's assistant. Board meeting moved up. Please come with your team. 9:30 sharp. I looked up. 7 pairs of eyes were locked on me. This is it, I said. The boardroom felt like another world compared to the basement. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. The mahogany table gleamed. The board members, 10 of them, sat in their tailored suits, eyes sharp, expressions unreadable. Elena sat at the head, calm as always. To her left sat John. His tie was perfect, but his face was drawn, pale. Adrian was there too, shifting nervously in his chair, the confidence drained from his posture. Thank you for joining us, Elena began. We're here to discuss the restructuring plan for marketing, including concerns raised about team allocation. John stood, smoothing his jacket. As you know, he began, our department is undergoing a transformation. Adrian has been pivotal in spearheading this effort. His strategies will position us as leaders in innovation. The temporary relocation of Team B was necessary to optimize resources. Moving forward, I propose... Stop. The voice came from one of the senior board members, a silver-haired woman I'd only met twice. Temporary relocation? You put your highest producing team in a basement with no ventilation, no light, and leaking pipes. Did you think we wouldn't find out? John stammered. It was logistical. We had no choice. Elena turned to me. Amanda, would you share your perspective? I rose, my knees steady despite the weight of the room. With respect, this isn't about space. It's about priorities. We've delivered 70% of this department's campaigns over the last 5 years. We've exceeded deadlines, hit budget targets, and closed the largest deal in Q1 history. And yet, my team was pushed into a basement to make room for someone with buzzwords, but no results. I slid copies of our documentation down the table. This is our work. This is Adrian's. Compare the numbers. For a moment, the only sound was the shuffle of papers. Then one board member muttered, "This is damning." Another added, "The client feedback is clear. They trust Amanda's team, not Adrian." I kept my voice level. We aren't here to argue for scraps of recognition. We came prepared to leave. We have offers. Good ones. But Elena asked for a chance to respond. So here we are. Elena nodded, then addressed the board. You've seen the data. You've seen the results. My proposal is simple. Amanda's team reports directly to me. They receive the resources and authority they've earned. John remains in a reduced oversight role for administrative purposes. Adrian will be reassigned pending performance review. John's face drained of color. Adrian stared at the table. One board member leaned back, steepling his fingers. Amanda, is this acceptable to you? I met his gaze. It's acceptable only if my team agrees. I turned to them. Carla, steady as ever, gave a sharp nod. May's lips curved in a small smile. Vega muttered, "About time." The others followed. I faced the board again. Then yes. When the meeting ended, John tried to corner me in the hallway. You set me up, he hissed. You wanted this from the start. I held his gaze. Number you set yourself up when you put us in that basement. I just made sure the right people saw it. His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since he arrived, he had nothing to say. Back in the basement, I told my team. The cheer that went up echoed off the concrete walls, a sound halfway between laughter and relief. Ren actually cried. Eric fist-bumped Vega, who looked as though a weight he'd carried for decades had finally been lifted. We're not done, I reminded them, smiling despite myself. We've still got to move back upstairs, this time for good. Carla raised her coffee cup like a toast. To daylight, she said. To daylight, we echoed. 2 weeks later, we sat in our new space. Bright windows, modern desks, plants back on the shelves. Adrian's desk was empty, his certificates gone. John's office door was closed more often than not. He'd been stripped of real authority, his power reduced to managing paperwork. We didn't celebrate his fall. That wasn't the point. The point was us. We had weathered humiliation, we had carried each other through, and we had walked out stronger. That evening, as the sun dipped low across the city skyline, I sent a message to my team. Remember this, the best revenge isn't destroying those who wrong you. It's building something they can never take away from you again. And for the first time in months, I felt at peace. Because we were no longer the team in the basement. We were the team that survived it, and built our own way back into the light.